This week, we're talking about light. Galileo chasing it across hills, ancient thinkers trying to map it, and John stepping right into that fascination to tell us something deeper. The light we really need isn't scientific, it's soul-saving. If you've walked through grief, fear, anxiety, or loneliness, this message is for you. Darkness isn't an unbeatable force. Light defeats it simply by shining and illuminating a path of hope. So come hear why the smallest light changes everything. You know, I've probably mentioned this before. I will battle light, photons, and wave/particles. Sometimes because I like to stand in a hot shower in the darkness. It's because it's very relaxing. So I turn off the bedroom lights and then the bathroom lights, and I close the bathroom door. Yet it's still amazing to me how much light still finds its way into the room. So I've actually been on a quest for absolute darkness. I'll say this, light does some interesting things. So I did a little research and found out that for centuries before Jesus, there were those in the world trying to unravel the mysteries of light. I thought that Galileo might have been one of the first because he tried to figure out how fast light traveled, and he used an assistant, 2 hills, 2 lanterns, and 2 pieces of cloth. He did this in the late 1500s after the time of Martin Luther. Turns out light travels at approximately 186,282 miles per second. His hills, they were only 2 miles apart. It would take light 0.01 milliseconds to cover that distance. Our reaction time is 200 to 300 milliseconds. Let's just say he didn't get it. Well, as it turns out, I was way off with my timing for people working with light. Empedocles was around 490 to 430 BCE. He tried to explain how vision worked. Euclid, 300 BC, mapped light with geometry. Ptolemy, 100 to 170 BCE. Bennett through glass and water. And there's Hero of Alexandria, who was at the time of Jesus. He was definitely at the time of John. And Alexandria was just down the coast from where John did his writing, a place that was like Silicon Valley in its day. Alexandria at that time was one of the world's intellectual centers. They were working on mathematics, engineering, astronomy, and optics. That's the environment Hero was in, and he used reflection to suggest light chooses the quickest route. He anticipated Fermat's law by 1,600 years, which states what he had discovered long 1.5 millennia before. So when John begins his gospel with light, logos, and cosmic order, he's speaking into a world where thinkers like Hero were actively exploring how light behaves, how sight works, and how the physical universe functions. Step 1, know your audience. And to them, light was one of the great mysteries. It still is. We've sent satellites out into the solar system. We've split the atom. We've walked on the moon, and yet the speed of light, see, the cosmic speed limit of 186,000 miles an hour, give or take, per second, we only pinned that down recently. We call it C because it stands for constant, the fastest anything can go, the baseline built into reality. Even in 2025, with all our tools and microscopes and particle accelerators, light is still beyond us. So what John did was to step into people's imagination and curiosity. People worked on their theories, some really good ones, and they did experiments because light mattered. I think John was aware of what people were talking about and the fascination with light, and used it to point out the need for a different kind of illumination. Not scientific light, that's not what he's talking about, but light for our souls. I think what he had going was a theory of his own. And that what we really struggle with isn't the speed of light or how it bends or how it finds its way into my bathroom. It's the absence of it that is the light for our souls. Many of us have wandered in darkness or depression, the darkness of grief, the darkness of anxiety, the darkness of loneliness, the darkness of addiction, the darkness of a world that rarely feels safe to us, and the darkness of loss. These are the sea we actually experience, the constant that is the ache that runs through human life. John doesn't get into optics and measurements, but he does get into hope. He tells us that in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. We're not talking about sunlight, but the actual core of our existence, the light that equals life, revelation, truth, salvation, the courage to see again, the power to live again. The light is God's presence. John steps into what was going on around him and flips the question. He flips it from what is light to who is light. And here's the part we often miss. Jesus didn't just have light, he gave it. His light wasn't theoretical, it was experienced. People felt lighter because he listened to them. They stood up straighter because he noticed them. Their shame was lifted because he touched them. Their fear eased because he defended them. Their wounds closed because he healed them. That's how the light of Christ works. It lands on you, it warms you, it changes and transforms you. And that is how his light becomes real in us, not by understanding it, but by receiving it, and then practicing it in the world. Our boy John wasn't doing science. He was dealing with the darkness and light of our lives. We don't just see by light. John understands that we live by it. Think about plants. We learn plants literally turn light into energy that feeds the world. It took until the early 1900s for that conclusion. Every loaf of bread, every apple, every blade of grass, all of it is stored sunlight. Hero wasn't the only one ahead of his time. That's what John is saying, that Jesus doesn't simply illuminate life. Jesus generates life. His light is not just information, rays bouncing or reflecting off of things so that we can perceive them by sight, but it's actual nourishment. You don't have to understand photosynthesis to eat. You don't have to understand Jesus to be fed. Jesus was born to defeat the darkness. The thing about darkness is that it isn't a force. It's an absence. You see, light has substance. Darkness doesn't. Light is active. Darkness is passive. Light travels. Darkness doesn't move at all. And the moment even the smallest light appears, darkness is defeated. Not by fighting, but simply by shining. John tells us that the darkness is powerless. We get caught thinking we need massive faith, heroic belief, a whole spiritual makeover to push back the darkness. I remember Robert Fulghum writes about being in a lecture, and the speaker, a Holocaust survivor. The speaker wrapped up and asked if there were any questions, just like speakers do. And Fulghum, as a bit of humor, asked, "Yeah, what's the meaning of life?" And everybody kind of chuckled, got up to leave. and the man asked everyone to stay seated. He wanted to answer. He pulled a small, worn mirror out of his pocket, and he stood near the window, catching the sunlight and reflecting it around the room. He told them, "We're not the light, but we find meaning in reflecting the light." John wasn't the light. John the Baptist wasn't the light. Jesus is the light. And their mission, their calling, was to testify to Jesus, testify to the light, reflect the light of Christ, to dispel the darkness that oppressed God's children. And that's our calling too, not to manufacture brilliance, but to pass on the warmth and compassion we've received. I may battle the photons and the science of light to relax in the dark, but let's embrace the light of Christ, the light for our souls, where even the tiniest light can scatter the darkness of despair. So let's go into the world this week and shine. Let someone see the light of Christ in your words, your deeds, your presence. You don't have to be the source. Just let the light of Jesus shine through you. And when it touches someone's life, it will travel farther than you have ever imagined. Amen.